Good morning. Welcome to Brewing Happiness. Grab your cup of favorite brew and let's just have a conversation, right? Well, I had a lovely weekend. I had a lovely weekend with my brother this weekend. He visited. We had some disappointments happening. We thought we were going to get a party together and, everybody got their own business and things just didn't come together to a party. Disappointment. Kind of happens to everybody, doesn't it? Ever tried, ever failed? No matter. Try again, fail better. Samuel Beckett said that. Because disappointment is inevitable. It hurts sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. It can even, drag you down into a funk. It's a part of the human experience. If you're a human, you have experienced disappointment because nobody gets everything that they want, right? That's just not realistic. Someone said, expectation is the root of all heartache. And indeed, some disappointments come from, how about unrealistic expectations, right? Insanely ambitious expectations. And some disappointments really just come at us out of left field, right? They just, we didn't really expect them. We didn't really do anything. They just happen. And that is life. Sometimes we're even disappointed when we do get what we want. Wasn't exactly how we pictured it. Or maybe we got something and then we didn't feel like we deserved it, so we couldn't enjoy it. Or maybe it's something we really didn't want in the first place, right? Disappointment is an offshoot of the basic emotion, sadness. It's a complex emotion that, touches us in a lot of ways. When we feel our expectations for a desired outcome is dashed, we know what it feels like, right? We all know what it feels like. Sometimes we're anger at not getting what we wanted. We might feel grief for the loss of what we expected to happen or what we had already claimed as ours. Hard stuff, right? Disappointment is an evolutionary, I'm not sure if that's the right word, evolutionary emotion. It was part of our evolution. It was part of evolving, right? It was part of the way we survived, grew. Because disappointment can make a difference. So really there are three main causes of disappointment. We have what's called arrival fallacy. Now this means when we're so focused on attaining our goal, we lose sight of everything else, right? We overextend ourselves. We're so unhappy. We're living with unhappiness and we're telling ourselves it's all going to be worth it when we arrive, whenever we're working for it gets there, right? But the getting there, the working to the happiness is not making us happy. So what you thought would bring you happiness and positive emotions is now causing you disappointment, right? Or unrealistic expectations, of course. We all do this. We build up our hopes to sometimes what you'll say are unattainable heights, right? Or we misread a situation, a relationship. Honestly, the higher the expectation, the more intense the letdown is. Finally, we experience disappointment from experiences in our childhood. If you had a traumatic event around loss or disappointment during childhood, you may have learned to stop expecting good things. You may have not developed the habit of positive thinking, right? And as an adult, your childhood experience may be coloring all your outcomes and might even turn it into like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That you expect disappointment and so that's what you get. Or how we cope with things is often, how we cope with disappointment is often a defining moment in our lives, right? How we respond is often influenced by our early years and our upbringing. If you had parents who expected perfection, disappointment, right? Or they were very critical. Or maybe you had parents who didn't comfort you when you experienced some kind of a disappointment, right? Didn't help you, teach you how to use that and turn it around. Didn't lift you up or show you how to, get back on the bike. But how we deal with disappointment actually sets the tone for what happens next in our lives, right? Some respond by then not setting their goals too high, right? Sometimes disappointment is so overwhelming and crushing that people respond by not trying anymore, not trying to achieve, not setting goals, or setting their goals so low that, there's no chance of disappointment. Others become overachievers. And I failed at that, and then their whole life is about proving themselves because of that original disappointment experience. But responding well to disappointment can also strengthen us, right? It can teach you new skills. It is definitely full of lessons that you apparently need to learn, right? And these are lessons that maybe we wouldn't have learned without this letdown. So the actions you take after disappointment can impact your eventual outcome and help you make better decisions the next time. And while disappointment feels lousy, and it is no fun, and no one is here to tell you that it is, it can only be thought of as a data point, right? New information that's to be evaluated and analyzed and helps to yield more understanding. So let's take Winston Churchill for an example. Early in his career in the disastrous First World War military campaign called the Gallipoli, he was forced to resign his position as the First Lord of the Admiralty. He'd come up with this plan to send the fleet through the Dardanelles Strait to capture Constantinople, Istanbul today. And this was later referred to as Churchill's folly because it did not go well. He hoped it would cause Turkey to quit the war and yay for his size, but it didn't go well. Tens of thousands died. Churchill was disgraced, and he was actually demoted. So, to cope with this and the humiliation, right, he was a public figure. A lot of people knew and were talking about his mistake and So, Churchill focused his attention and his energy away from politics. He became an infantry officer, went to fight in France, and while he was out of the spotlight, he used that time to, think long and hard about what happened, what it taught him, what he learned about dealing with life's challenges. And at first, though, it was overwhelming. He called it his black dog of depression. But he realized that it would be more constructive in the long run to frame his disappointment as a learning experience, not as a failure. And he used it as a catalyst for personal growth. And this deep soul searching yielded information about him and the world around him and how it all operated. And obviously he came back to roaring success. Incidentally, he also suffered disappointment when he was ousted out of the British Parliament after basically winning World War II for the Allies. So a great man, a great life, great disappointments. It seems almost all creative people, artists, scientists, engineers, visionaries, innovators, others, anybody who's made a significant impact in the world have one thing in common. They encountered difficulties along their way, right? They had disappointments and setbacks on the ladder to success. No one's rise or no one's improvement path looks like this, like a straight line, right? It's this. We go, we lose a little ground. We grow, we lose a little ground. That's how it works. And all people do, they had to tough it out. They had to keep going, or they did tough it out and keep going, because those are the names you know. The ones who did tough it out, who did keep going. Everybody suffers setbacks. Some people, though, get up, dust themselves off, and charge forward even stronger. And those are the people whose names you know. They learn to learn. They learn to learn from their failures, right? And they learn to take the criticism, take the knocks, get up when they're knocked down, and just keep on keeping on repeatedly. So here's a few examples. I thought it'd be fun to go through a few examples of major disappointments that people have overcome. Admiral Richard Byrd. He was the explained explorer. He was released from the Navy as unfit for service, right until he flew over both the North Pole and the South Pole. Then they welcomed him back as, a hero. Werner von Braun, one of the world's top brilliant rocket scientists, flunked 9th grade algebra. Pretty sure they're using algebra somewhere in rocket science, but didn't stop. Gertrude Stein, American writer and poet, submitted poems for 20 years before one was finally accepted. 20 years. She got those rejection letters and continued to submit those poems. Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace, flunked out of college. Enrico Caruso, the acclaimed Italian tenor, was told by his music teacher, "You can't sing, you have no voice at all. Get out." Sigmund Freud was booed, vigorously booed, when he first presented some of his out there ideas to his contemporaries in Europe. But he didn't let that stop him, right? Took that information, turned it around. Henry Ford failed and went broke 5 times before he was actually successful. Now, I think we all know the story of J.K. Rowling, right? The famous author of Harry Potter was on welfare and a single mom when she began writing her famous series, right? She went from welfare to being one of the richest women in the world in 5 years because of her determination and a little talent and skill and maybe some luck. But, Walt Disney was fired by a newspaper editor who told him he lacked imagination and he had no good ideas. Walt Disney, right? His first animation company had financial issues. He had to dissolve it, ate dog food to survive, and he actually failed a few more times before successfully opening Disney Studios. Charles Schulz, we know Charles Schulz of Charlie Brown and Snoopy fame, right? Charles Schulz was rejected by his school's yearbook staff, and he was turned down for a job as a cartoonist at Disney Studios. So imagine, I'm not good enough for Disney. You could take that and decide you weren't good enough for anything, or you could just keep doing what you're doing. And right? John Creasy, English crime and science fiction writer, got 752 rejection slips before he published 600 novels. 600 novels. Jack London, one of my favorite authors. Jack London, American author, writer, journalist, famous for Call of the Wild, received 600 rejection slips before he sold his very first story. Imagine that. Can you imagine continuing and believing in yourself so much that you kept going after you were told no 600 times? I get to cry a little bit. These things make me emotional. JFK. You remember him, John F. Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy, right? He graduated at the bottom of his class at the famous Quaid School in Connecticut. The headmaster wrote a letter to his parents saying he was disorganized, he was too casual, and he couldn't get serious about anything. Steven Spielberg dropped out of high school, and then he applied to film school 3 times and was turned down. "We don't want you. You can't make movies. Get out." He said, "Okay." Colonel Sanders, right? Harlan Davis Sanders, famous chicken recipe, rejected over 1,000 times before a single restaurant decided to accept it. I don't know about you, but these are very inspiring stories to me. These are very important to tell us that not to give up, not to lay down, not to let that disappointment define us or stop us. So, how do we use disappointment to our advantage? Right? How do I say, how can I be Winston Churchill and take my giant disappointment and turn it into huge success? Well, for one thing, simply having disappointment tells you a couple things, right? It means you're passionate about something. You care enough to care. You care enough to be disappointed. The fact that your expectation missed the reality of the outcome just means that you were brave enough to show up in the first place and have those ambitions and those expectations. You tried something. Yay! It's an opportunity for growth, right? If you acknowledge that no matter what you thought you deserved, in most cases, what you got was truly what you deserved, right? And then you can align that, and that can help align expectations with your reality. And then finally, disappointment makes us stronger, right? More resilient. Studies after study after study show the benefits of adversity in our lives. It includes greater mental fortitude, right? Increased emotional intelligence, clearer thinking, a stronger stance against negative thinking. So going through adversity, having disappointment, getting knocked down and getting back up, every time makes you stronger, makes you better. So it wasn't for nothing. It wasn't so you could feel lousy. It wasn't so somebody could prove to you that you didn't have what it takes. That's not what disappointment's all about, is it? So how do we deal with it effectively? So here's a little 5-step process on dealing with disappointment. Let me know. What do you think? Do you ever get disappointed? Is it ever discouraging? Is the thought of thinking of disappointment or thinking of discouragement or thinking of failure as a lesson to be learned? Shift perspective in your head a little bit so we don't see it as a failure. I'm a loser. I didn't succeed. I mean, yes, we think those things. Yes, we're going to think those things, and we're not going to stop thinking those things. But can we get past that, right? Can we move that to where's the lesson? What have I learned? How can I improve? So here's the 5-step process. Number 1, let it out. Feel it. As we always say, when you got horrible emotions, you need to just sit with it. Acknowledge that it's not fun. It sucks. Maybe confide in a friend or a family member, right? Or maybe if you don't want to do that, you channel it through journaling or art, or you take a long run or a walk. Or the point is, feel what you're feeling and then let it go. Feel it for however long you feel is appropriate, and then let it go and move on. Sometimes I like to set a timer. I'm gonna feel this way for an hour. I'm gonna feel this way for 5 minutes, and then I'm busy. I got things to do. It really helps. Research shows suppressing our emotions is one of the biggest hindrances in personal growth. So we don't want to pretend like disappointment didn't happen, or pretend like, no big deal. I wanted this thing forever and I didn't get it. And hey, not real. But get some perspective. This is where we're talking it out with someone can help, right? Getting someone else's input. Did I misread this? Am I having some unrealistic expectations? Did I make some assumptions that I shouldn't have made? Sometimes we need some outside perspective to kind of see how things really are, right? Get a reality check for how we perceived it. But then, third, know your own heart. Balance that external input with what you know in your inner wisdom. Disappointment can attack our sense of self, right? If we have too many disappointments, it can really skew us into believing that's the way the world works. So it's important to know your own core values and principles and examine why. Examine your whys. Examine, why am I doing this? To help you keep getting up, keep going at it 600 times, 1,000 times before you're successful. And then practice self-acceptance, right? Don't brood on these negative experiences. They happen and they're no fun. But fretting or holding on to it forever is just not going to help. The variable here is time. No one's expecting you, like I said, to just bounce back immediately or act like it didn't matter or blow it off without any thought. That's not the answer here. Scarlett O'Hara, I'll think about that tomorrow. No. But once you have given yourself some time, it's time to jump back in. Start again. Really dig in. Look through what happened. Look through the situation. What can you learn? What lessons are being brought to you right then? The truth is, disappointments are going to happen. Large and small. Some we deserve, some we don't. In the course of your lifetime as a human being, that's what's going to happen, is you are going to be disappointed. So, first of all, just know part of life, right? That makes it's not unique to you. It's not something, it's not something, well, maybe it is, but it is not a unique experience. Everybody has disappointments. They come and they go. Some points of life have more disappointments than others, right? It means you're living a life. It means that you're out there trying things, doing things, putting yourself out there and giving your, and putting the shot over the bow, putting yourself out there, knowing you might not succeed. That's courage, my friend. That's bravery. Those are things to feel proud of. When you failed, you can say, but I tried. I did it. I went out there and did it. And here's what I learned so I can do it better the next time. The truth is, you might be exactly where you need to be when disappointment happens to learn the lesson that you need to learn that couldn't be learned without the situation you just had to go through. Right? Perspective. It's all perspective. That's the name of the game. Disappointment is inevitable. I'll say that again. Disappointment is inevitable, but discouragement, now that is a choice. So that's the story on disappointment. It happens to everybody. The people that you read about in the history books and watch on TV, in most cases, those are the people it happened to the most. And why did it happen to them the most? Because they're the ones who kept putting it out there. How many of us, after 100 or 200 or 300 rejection letters, would go, well, I guess I'm not a very good poet. Nobody wants to read what I wrote. Seems like that would be your natural response. But to have it in you, to keep on keeping on through 600 rejection letters, through 1,000 rejection letters, through being told you have no talent in your area of passion. The people that get up, figure it out, and come back and do it again, those are the heroes, right? And that's what we're striving for, to use disappointment as a stepping stone, a wisdom builder, a way to build up our resilience. You just don't forget. Don't forget. Be proud of yourself for being out there. Have perspective about your failure and what it says. You are not your failure. You are not what did not happen to you or what you did not achieve. Don't equate yourself with it. It's just, like I said, just one data point in a lifetime of data points. So take that data point and put it to use. Learn what you can from it. Pull lessons, become wiser, make better decisions. So with that said, I'm going to end this with a poem. I can't remember if I read this poem recently or not. I'm going to have to apologize. I got it ready, and I think I did not read it one day because the show went long. But if I read it recently, oh well. It's called Not the Lesson. And I think it speaks perfectly to our discussion today on disappointment. When things are good and times are high, we seldom stop to question why or take the chance to jeopardize the sweet release that bliss supplies. No questions asked or analyzed as current pleasures tantalized, forgotten in felicity, and joys found in simplicity. To bask in moments purely grand, oblige no urge to understand. And though as much as any soul I love the moment's happiness, I also know at times we stroll along the anguish of distress. When days are dark and all is lost, we're forced to face what most we fear of what we have and what it cost, and to which values we adhere. As patience, strength, and faith are tested, future wisdoms all are vested, lessons learned we grow beyond, expand our lives and break the bond of chains we make of limitations, rejecting all their implications, unaware that tribulations often lead to inspirations. Pain and suffering rarely seen is not the lesson, but the mean. So revel when the glory days bring joy and sunshine cross your course, and diminish not the happy ways you'll join in union with your source. But in times when hope seems far away, when grace and courage are required, take heart, that what you give today is not half as much as you've acquired. That's right. Lessons for today. All right, my friends. Until tomorrow, make it a happy day.